Hello, Julie here, and thank you for joining me here today. I'm going to be creating two Christmas cards, and I'm going to be using papers from Arty or Colourblast. So these cards can be made from your scraps basically, because I'm just using some leftover pieces. There's an assortment of Colourblast paper collections here. I'll put a link to the papers down below anyway, so you can see them if you want to. So to start with, both of my cards are 5¼ inches square, and I'm cutting a piece of this mauve coloured paper. I actually cut it 5 inches square, but later on I changed my mind and cut that down to 4¾ inches square. Next I'm going to cut an assortment of strips. They're 1/2 inch wide, and I start 3 inches long and work my way up to 1¼ inches long. And I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 pieces, and they just get gradually smaller as they go up, but they're all 1/2 inch wide, deep, I suppose you'd say, 1/2 inch deep. So this is where I decide I want that pattern paper a bit smaller, and I trim it down to 4¾ inches square. The reason I trimmed that down was because I wanted to put a piece of gold card as a mat for that pattern paper on my background. So now I'm cutting my gold mirror card to 5 inches square. To give my card a bit of a shabby look, I'm going to use my distressing tool to distress the edges of all of the cardstock, including the mirror card, and then I'm going to use my black Versa colour ink cube to ink around the edges of all of those papers. Once I've done that, I'm going to now start attaching my layers to my card front. I make my own card fronts. I use a 300 GSM smooth white cardstock. I buy that in a pack of about 100 sheets, I think, and they're A4 size. So now I'm going to use double-sided tape to add all of those layers on top. I'm going to start, my little strips of paper form a Christmas tree, and so I'm starting with my widest one at the bottom and then working my way up to the shortest one at the top. I used a star punch to punch a gold star from the same mirror card that I used behind my pattern papers. I'm going to add that to the top of my tree, and then I'm just going to use my scissors to cut a small rectangle of the same gold mirror card to be the pot that my Christmas tree is sitting in. I'm going to use liquid glue to attach those two pieces to the card. For my sentiment, I'm going to use a sentiment that I've printed out from my computer. What I do is I print out a whole sheet, A4 sheet of one sentiment, so say in this case Merry Christmas, but I do it in all different sizes and fonts, and then when I'm creating a card I can just pick one that suits the best. Now I've chosen this one, I've trimmed it down so that it fits within that 1/2 inch section at the bottom of the tree, the first stripe or strip, and now I'm going to attach that. I could have used liquid glue, but I decided to use double-sided tape, and yes, so that's how I'm going to attach the Merry Christmas to the card. And that completes our first card. My second card didn't really work out the way I had planned, but I'm still happy with it. I'm using this bauble die, and I have cut that out of a 5-inch piece of pattern paper. This is once again from Colourblast, one of their Colourblast ranges. And I have cut a piece of acetate that is 5 inches, it's slightly under 5 inches, so it's just a little bit smaller than this pattern paper. Now I'm using liquid glue to attach that acetate to the pattern paper. I'm putting glue all around the edge of the bauble and all around the edge of the pattern paper. I use the same die, and I don't know the name of this die. I bought it from one of the ladies on one of the clearance sites on Facebook here, and I think she's called Down Under Scrapbooking or Down Under Die, something like that. Anyway, I've used the same die to cut the bow at the top of the bauble in gold mirror card, and I'm just going to stick that into place now. I'm going to use my liquid glue to do that because getting things to stick to acetate can be a bit tricky. So my original plan was to make a shaker card and put that ornament back, or that bauble die back into position, but when I did that it just covered up too much of the hole and you wouldn't see much of the contents of the shaker. I really wanted to make a shaker card, so I went ahead and used some of the double-sided foam tape. Now I got this foam tape from scrapbook.com and it's really thin strips. I think it's about 1/8 or 1/16 of an inch wide. So I'm going to put a row of that all around my bauble and up around the bow as well, and I'm actually going to put a double layer of it on there. Now I started by just sticking it onto the acetate and it didn't stick that well, so what I ended up doing was taking it off, putting a little bead of the liquid glue underneath it, and then putting the double-sided foam tape back on top of that. You can see I'm just going sort of leaving about 1/4 of an inch or so around the bauble just to give me a bit more room for my shaker elements. I end up using some sequins as my shaker elements, so I wanted a bit of room. But as I said, I'm going to put a double layer of the foam tape, and I'm going to use the liquid glue between the foam tape and the acetate. You also need to apply a double layer of the foam tape to the outer edge of this panel so that when you apply the panel to your card front it sits nice and flat. I had a container of multicoloured sequins, so I'm going to just tip some of these onto the front of my card, and then I'm going to add that panel that I've created with the bauble die cut in it on top of that, so that the sequins are captured within the bauble. So what I decided to do so that I could see more of my sequins was cut the centerpiece out of the bauble so that you could see the sequins in that center area, and yet you could still get the idea of the pattern of the bauble. I cut this sort of around some of the pieces in the bauble die. In hindsight, I think I should have cut just straight across. I think it would have been better if I'd just cut straight across, and if I do this again, that's what I will do. So I'm going to cut my bauble into sections, and then I'm going to use double-sided tape to attach that to my acetate front. I'm going to ink around the edge of it before I do attach it. Sorry, I meant I used liquid glue, not double-sided tape, to attach my bauble pieces to my acetate. The sentiment for this card is printed onto a piece of cardstock, and I got it in a pack from Uniquely Creative last Christmas for one of their Christmas card making packs, I think. So I've just trimmed that down, and I'm going to use double-sided tape to attach that in the centre of my bauble in that open area. The card's looking a little bit plain to me, so I'm going to use my fine black pen. It's a Uniball eye pen, black, and I'm going to just put a double scribbly border around my front panel, and I'm also going to draw a scribbly border around the bauble. So that finishes my second card. So both of my cards today have been created using scraps of Colourblast papers. I'll put a link in the description box below to the paper range. Yeah, thank you for joining me. I hope you can join me when I post my next video, and I hope you got a bit of inspiration to use some of your scraps to create some Christmas cards. See you next time. Bye.